Yeah. Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo, Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parabrahmam, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Akanta Mantalakaram, Yaptam Yena Sarasharam, Tatpadam Darshitam Yena, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Good morning. If there is one particular quality that we need in life to be free of misery, is fearlessness. Upanishads and Vedas declare that fear is the cause of misery, even to evil. Because we have fear in everything. Fear comes in the form of desires, anxiety, grief. So in everything we do, we pursue towards that benevolence which gives abhayam. So if you can become fearless, if you can conquer fear, that is moksham, that is liberation, that is freedom, that is anandam. But to be fearless, you have to really prepare your lifestyle, your approach, your conduct, your attitude to things. First of all, you need to be on the go. You know, in Kathopanishad, when Nachiketa goes to Yama and asks for the supreme knowledge, because everybody is feared on the earth towards death. So what is that death? What is that? How can I win the death? How can I overcome the fear? And he says, Uttishta Jagrata Prapyavara Nipotata. Get up, arise, awake. Just go on, identify the great stages, learn from them. This is the Lord of Death telling him. Shurascha Dara Nishida. That path is not going to be easy. So if you take that fearlessness is the key, then if you have someone to teach us how to be fearless in life, he or she becomes a great Mahatma for us to take it forward. Now, we are going to talk about one such Mahatma who took these Maha Mantras from the Upanishad, Uttishta Jagrata, and make everybody as Abhihi, fearless person. Is Swami Vivekananda. It makes sense because we are looking at the sage's life and we saw Ramakrishna Paramahamsa in the last class. So Ramakrishna Paramahamsa's name always resonates with Swami Vivekananda. So we will see about Vivekananda today. Om Stapakaya Cha Dharmasya Sarva Dharma Swarupine Avatara Varishtaya Ramakrishnaya Te Namaha. Yadatne Dakida Shakti Ramakrishna Siddhahya Sarva Vidya Swarupa Tam Sharadam Pranamamyakam. Om Namah Shri Yadirajaya Vivekananda Shivariye Satya Sukha Swarupaya Swamine Tapakarine. It is very difficult to talk about Swami Vivekananda's life, any sage's life, in a short span of time. So we will look at it in two important angles. I personally find Ramakrishna's relationship with all the sages, all the gurus, and especially with the Vivekananda, the relationship is extremely profound, very intuitive, very steering, very encouraging for us to learn. So I want to approach how Vivekananda, before he becomes Vivekananda, is Narendranath. How Narendra, or Narendra in short, finds Ramakrishna. That bonding. Plus, once he becomes Swami Vivekananda, his teachings, He is of very deep spiritual inspiration, very fervid eloquence. His language is soul-stirring poetry. Very beautiful figure, handsome figure, imposing figure, emotional, complex sometimes. So it is very important to understand the context, because nowadays you can see, quite some time, people quote a few phrases from Vivekananda, often criticizing other Vedantic scholars, teachers. It becomes a very politically incorrect statement to make, but who am I to discuss this? But I would like to warn you, I would like to really understand the context, because every avatara, every Mahatma, when they come onto this world, they come for certain purposes. Of course, we call Bhagavan Krishna as a Purna avatar. He addresses the dharma, jnana, impediments in this world. He removes them and takes them forward. But sometime, Buddha came into this world to looking at the lowering of Vedic orders, how the Karma Yoga is deteriorated to materialistic life, how the rituals become important, how the social order has gone. Therefore, he protested. When there is a noise in the class, some may be reciting the lesson, some may be making noise. The teacher doesn't care. He says, everybody shut up, keep quiet, because you want to grab hold of the attention of it. So when they do that, even those who study is going to be stopped. Like a doctor giving a dose of antidote to kill everything, antibiotic, before it cures. So every avatara Purusha, when they come to the world, their approach is very, very difficult to understand. So Buddha basically said, stop all this karmas. Look at these sufferings. His heart was so large. That was necessary for the time. When there was Shankara came, in Shankara's time, it is the fundamental knowledge has gone, because the Buddhism has deteriorated. It's gone into a different way. Nobody understood Buddha's teaching. Shunyavadam came in, Shanavadam came in, big Viharas came in, Saguna Upashap came in. So then he has to really bring in a universal knowledge. So his focus was on it. The reason I say this as a preemptive statement, because Vivekananda does treat Shankara as a mighty of knowledge. But he does say, maybe he doesn't have a large heart. Maybe he did not address the poverty. Maybe we must take Buddha's heart. For example, Ramanuja, he praises Ramanuja for, Ramanuja did a wonderful thing, bringing everybody into this fold. But he says Ramanuja's heart is bigger. But Ramanuja did not take the profound Advaitic philosophy. So where he stops, same way Buddhist, he condemns Buddhism later. So, but you can see, Vivekananda wanted to take the good of everything to create a new order. And therefore, his teaching, his lectures, his quotes, when you read it in a impartial way, it may give you a very different feeling. So just bear in mind. Vivekananda, you look at him from his birth, it's important to understand his lineage, because his grandfather, Durgacharan, after his son, first son, he takes sannyasa. He renunciates the life, he goes away. So the Vishwanath, his son, and Bhuvaneshwari Devi, so they got, by the blessing of their Ishtadevata, Kuladevata, Vireshwara in Kashi, Narendranath. His name is Vireshwara, alias Narendranath. Then he's got 2 other brothers and 4 sisters born. Narendra was very chubby and a beautiful child, especially very beautiful eyes he's got. She grows up like any other child, but more active, physically active, very spiritually introverted, very, very interested in pick up everything. His memory was so like like a magnet. He can grab everything, understand, studies very well. So he was born in on Makar Sankranti Day, 12th of January, 1863, on a Monday, Sankranti Day, very auspicious day. His father and mother are they are debonair, they are sophisticated people, educated people. Mother is especially very devotional. She inculcated a lot of values to Narendranath. There is a good, Swami says later in life, in fact, when he was later stands up on a caravan and preaches in Chennai, it was like a Lord Krishna standing on a chariot. A small anecdote, when he was very young and when he comes back, the teacher asked him in the school, what do you want to be when you're a big person? And Narendra says, I want to be a horse rider, charioteer. Because the jatka, the horse cart which takes him to the school, he looks at the driver, the chariot driver, and he thinks that's a great job to do. So his mother listens to the story and tells him, very good. And then he shows a picture of Lord Krishna on a chariot and say, yes, become a charioteer, but like this one. Whatever you do, become the best. So like that, he's got a virtuous values in his mind. He grows up. Then he attains teenage and 16th age. He goes to college, 1879. The Presidency College in Calcutta, and then go to the Scottish Church College. He takes the Western history, European history, Western theology. So he's very robust, very rational. He understands, he wants to learn everything. His vocabulary is very good. So he learns European history, European theologies. So much so, the professors of the college, many of them are those days, is East India Company ruling India. They were praising him. There's not even a single student in Germany or England to match you understanding Western history, theology. So he's such a person. And incidentally, Professor William Hastie of Scottish University College there in Calcutta tells him in one of the lectures, the class, but they were talking about consciousness, and he mentions about a saint called Ramakrishna Paramahamsa in Dakshineshwar. It was a 17 years of age for Naren that time. So that's the first time about Ramakrishna goes to Narendranath. So Narendra was very devotional. He's got he plays rugby, he takes wrestling, he takes, fencing, he does all kinds of sports, studies well, but he's got a wonderful voice. He can sing so well. He sings bhajans. He's very devoted to Shiva, Vireshwara. He likes Shankaras. He recites Nirvana Shastram every time. He likes Buddha. But he's in his mind, he always questions, where is God? Has anybody seen God? That was a time the Brahma Samaj in Calcutta, which is Rajaram Mohan Rai started in 1774 or something. He's already grown up, and Brahma Samaj is a kind of it does some good, and sometimes it's also not very good. It has done quite a few things. It has basically discarded idol worship. It brought all this very abstract, esoteric Vedantic knowledge as a primary motive. It discarded rituals. It was very appeasing to the Western audiences, Western theology. Rajaram Mohan Rai, Devendranath Tagore, Tagore's father, they're all great founders and nurturers of it. And Narendra joins them. But he couldn't get satisfaction because he understands theory, he understands all this knowledge, but he goes on asking, anybody seen God? If you've seen, can you show me? Once he goes to Devendra Tagore and asks him, have you seen God? And he says, well, I will tell you how you can see God. Go and meditate and do this dhyanam, do all this. He is not happy. In fact, later he's going to say in his life, I closed my eyes and I did all the meditation, but I couldn't get mukti, I couldn't see God. But I see God somewhere else, and he's going to come. So, but he could not really be comfortable with all these things. So it is to the border of atheism in that sense, but internally devoted to the Vedic knowledge. So he was wandering around. Then the pressure comes at home. They want to get married. So he goes and talks to his cousin, Surendranath, and say, look, I'm not really interested in it. And that was a time Surendranath, who was a devotee of Ramakrishna, organizes bhajan at his house. So Ramakrishna Paramahamsa goes there. Surendranath invites Naren. Naren goes there, and Naren sings beautiful bhajans. And Sri Ramakrishna listens to it, and he gets very enthralled, and he says, do come to Dakshineshwar. So he's very curious. Naren was very curious. So this is where I think the Suresh Guru Shishya relationship going to start. After a month, he goes there. As soon as he enters, Sri Ramakrishna looks at him with such a fond and affection, as if the mother cow is looking at the calf. He asks him to sing. So he sings. And Sri Ramakrishna goes into trance. And suddenly wakes up, asks Narendra to follow him. He takes him to his room. And he says, why didn't you come so long? I was looking for you. You are the sage Nara. He pleads to him. He hugs him. He kisses him. He goes there, bring sugar candies and sweets and barfis, feeds him. And then Narendra is a young man, and he feels shy. He said, give it to me. I will eat on my hand. No. I will give it to my friends. He said, no, I will give them different things. You eat. He feeds him. And he says, okay, let's go back. He said, okay, you promise me you'll come back again. He promises. And they come back. He's thinking, what is this man? He call it monotonic craziness. Is he maniac? Is he mentally unstable? He comes back and sits and watches him. But Sri Ramakrishna was absolutely serene. He's very confused. He goes back. It is in his mind all the time. And again, after a month, he comes. This time he is thinking, I will not let him do anything such hanky-panky stuff. I don't want him to touch. He is sitting there in front of him, and then he puts his feet on him. And he goes into trance. Everything is gone, and he sees this white light everywhere. And he cries in fear. Please, what are you doing to me? I'm going to die. I have my mother at home. Please, get me out of this. Get me out of this. When he wakes up, he tells himself, and Ramakrishna was stroking his chest and saying, okay, this is enough for today. Naren got really stunned. Still, he was very agnostic about it. What is this? What is happening to me? The third time. You see, somehow he doesn't want to go, but he wants to go. And Sri Ramakrishna wants him to see. He goes there third time. The time he was sitting in front of the Sri Ramakrishna sings a bhajan, and then he walks to the garden. Ramakrishna walks to the garden. Narendra follows. And there is this tree, banyan tree, where he's amla tree, where he sits and take meditation. Again, he goes into trance and touches you. This time with the hand. Ramakrishna says later, in this trance, I asked him all about his previous janma, and therefore I can tell he was a sage Nara. Yes, he's an incarnation. Sri Ramakrishna says this. But anyway, Narendra came out of this and he asked the question. In fact, he asked him in the previous meeting, have you seen God? And for the first time, there is no, extempore, there's no exaggerated statements about quoting Upanishad and Nirvachanam, all that. No, he's straightforward. Yes, I have seen God. I see God. I like to see you. I talk to God. You too can do it. So first time a Swami, a Paramahamsa is telling me this, I do not know whether he's true or not, but he drags me towards him. So therefore, the next 5-6 years, Narendra keeps in touch with him, but always with a kind of scrutiny, inspection in his mind. But Sri Ramakrishna's fondness on the potential disciple is phenomenal. He doesn't go to Sri Ramakrishna for some time because he's busy with this Brahma Samaj bhajans. So one day Sri Ramakrishna goes to Brahma Samaj, knowing that he's going to be there. And as soon as he sees Narendra there, he goes into trance. And then he falls down and it's a big commotion there. So Narendra stops his bhajan and literally scolds him. Why are you coming here? And he says, I have to see you. I love you. I have to see you. So he gets very embarrassed. There's another occasion where in the attic, Sri Narendra and his friends are sitting there and studying. But he's not gone back to this Dakshineswar temple, and Sri Ramakrishna was very longing. So he's got a disciple called Latu. So Latu and Swamiji Paramakrishna goes to Narendra's house. The servant says, no, he is upstairs. And Sri Ramakrishna climbs the ladder. Latu is following. They were climbing the ladder. Halfway, hearing the noise, Narendra looks around the window and he sees him. As soon as he sees Narendra, Sri Ramakrishna goes into trance, about to fall off. Then quickly they come down, grab him, put him there. So Narendra's friend asks him, who is this person? And Narendra tells him, you go home. He's a madman, you go home. And then he scolds him. Lovingly. Even Latu was not happy that Narendra calls him a madman. But who knows this bond? Sri Ramakrishna, please, so you can see the emotional connection happening. The Guru is seeking the Sishya. The Guru knows the Sishya. He's going to be a Sishya. He's not going to leave him. He's going to really create that prem, that love, that pyar, that. So this is becoming very tight bond. So Narendra still he comes from the Brahma Samaj, he still have these thoughts. He doesn't like Kali worship, idol worship, and he argues with Sri Ramakrishna. I remember once, I think he was even Vedanta, he started sometime, not very sure how to go about. He's a very confused young man. But it was 1884. His father dies all of a sudden. But he died and leaving a big legacy of debts, lots of money he owes to people. So debtors come in, legal cases come in, everything is taken up, bankruptcy. So Narendra has to find a job. He could not find a job. He cries. Even once he was singing a song at home, his mother tells him, you worship this God or worship this divine being. What the divine being has done to us? Nothing. See, even the mother has become, because of poverty, before this grief, she started losing faith. It all really strikes him very hard. So he goes to Sri Ramakrishna and says, look, I think the best thing is I take sannyasa. I want to renunciate. It's quite easy. Whenever the grief comes in, You want to run away, like Arjuna did. Show them. Then he comes all the philosophy. I will not do this karma. I will go run away. So he wants to run away. Sri Ramakrishna says no. In fact, he says, you stay at the world until such time I am in this world. He did not give him sannyasa. Until Ramakrishna passed away, he did not take sannyasa. So he says, don't go away. And he says, can you give me ecstasy? I want to, everybody, your disciples are moving in the heart. They are crying, they are weeping. I don't get that kind of a moving heart. Make me come into trance. And Sri Ramakrishna tells him, no. When a big elephant enters into a little pond, the little pond becomes scattered. It is, stormed because the big steps are getting into this pond. But the same elephant, if it goes to the mighty Ganges, very little trouble. Nothing happens to the Ganges. So you are like a Ganges. So all these devotees like little ponds. For them, this trance and excitement, ecstasy, make them behave like this. But you are like mighty Ganges. So you're giving two things to him. A, that his heart is not moving because he is in a very profound thinking beyond this Maya. B, he has to move. He has to get devoted. So life goes on. He finds a small job and he makes both ends meet, but it's still difficult times. One day he was soaked wet, sitting in the Ganges, rain is coming through. And he says, okay, I have no course. I go back and ask Sri Ramakrishna, because he knows everything is given to him by Mahakali. Let him go and ask him. So he goes there and say, let Mahakali give me job, give me money. So you know Mahakali, go and talk to her. And Ramakrishna smiles and says, well, if you want something, you must go and ask. You go and ask. This is a Tuesday today. It's a Tuesday that happened to be auspicious day. Go and ask. So he goes. So first time he's going to pray to Mahakali devotedly. He goes there and look at Mahakali and his heart's melt. He sings, give me the Jnana Vairagya Siddhyattam. Give me the profound knowledge. Give me that Shraddha. Give me the Vairagyam. He comes out. And his face is glowing. And Ramakrishna asks, have you got what you want? He said, no. I went there. I couldn't ask. I forgot to ask. I asked for something else. Okay, try again. He goes back again. This time I'll ask. Sings bhajans, Jnana Vairagyam, Moksha Prakti, Ananda, bliss. Coming back. Third time he goes. This time he stays for a longer time, trance, meditate, sing, come back, fulfilled. He transforms himself to a devotee of God, Mahakali. He understands this Saguna Brahman, Upasana, his essential nature to make one. See the transition of him. Another incident happened on the Advaita philosophy as well, which you must remember. It comes back to him in life later. Once he was talking to his friends. Now he's very knowledgeable about Shankara, Advaita, Dvaita, Ashtadvaita, Buddhism. And that day he was very dejected and say, look, this cup is a Brahman. This coffee jar is a Brahman. You are a Brahman. I am a Brahman. What funny things. He laughs. So Ramakrishna was just passing by that time and he touches him. And because he's so mature and he goes into the Advaita Anubhuti, inexplicable. He doesn't tell anybody. In fact, these two things, this Mahakali's experience and which made him as a devotee, it was in his heart. He never preached Shaguna Brahma Bhashana. He never preached bhakti until the later time. But he was devoted in his heart. So it goes on. One day, it was it was a day in the afternoon. The Vaishnavites are, the movement is coming very largely after Chaitanya's revelation. They come and worship Paramahamsa. And they were talking about three things, which are very fundamental tenets of Vaishnavism. That is devotion to the Lord's name, service to the Lord, and compassion to the devotees. It's very noble principles Vaishnavas follow. So Ramakrishna was listening to that. When he heard compassion to others, he was aroused. And he said, compassion? How can you be compassionate to anybody else? Who are you to become compassionate to others? Nobody needs because the moment you use the word compassion, seva, dhanam, all that, somehow you have something to give. He is such a pure Parabrahman he was. He condoned that, but basically he's using it to return something. His heart was in Narendra's thinking. So he says, compassion is not there. It is devotion, it is worship. Because the same Parabrahman is there everywhere. So in poverty, in stupidity, in grief, in scavengers, in priests, in scholars, in fools, in wounded, in everywhere there is God. Although he was telling the Vaishnavites saints, it was going to Narendra's heart. He realizes now the true meaning of Advaitam. The search of God, if I have to see the God somewhere, it is in this world, in front of me. The divinity is in everything I see. So fools are those who recite mantras, going after this yajnas, going after this vigrahas. You need all this to purify the mind. But it's the divinity in every being. This dawned in him. Now this is going to be his tenet of it. He got hold of it. You have to be devoted. You have to have esoteric knowledge is needed. But service to the community, absolute worship is in upbringing, in uplifting the community, seeing everything as God. Now this is going to be his very strong principles in life. So then comes the time, an important time in Naren's life where he's going to become Swami Vivekananda. I think now we should call him Swami because now he has become a fully devoted, the young man now become a true sage in making. So Swami now is organizing people to help the movement of Sri Ramakrishna. But Sri Ramakrishna is leaving this world. In August 16th, 1886, he's going to depart. But just 2 days before, he calls Narendra into his room. And then Narendra was sitting on his footstep. And then he gives him everything. He says, I am giving all my knowledge, all my siddhas, all my powers. I give everything to you. He closes the eyes. Both are in a trance. And then he says, once he come out, he said, look, Naren, I am now ordinary fakir. I am a beggar. I am nothing now. Everything I given to you. After 2 days, of course, he attended Mahasamadhi. Then is a history. So then, when he's gone, the devotees are very sad. So Narendranath, Swami Narendra is not anymore interested in it. So he changes his name to Sachidanand. He got lots of names, when he was young, he was called Vireshwara, Bale, Naren. But he changed his name to Sachidananda. And they go to a small village called Baranagur. And then they rented a old house, which is wrecked. And then they convert into a mutt, Ramakrishna mutt. And he's got 15 or so disciples of Sri Ramakrishna there. And then he organizes He goes and works and takes care of the family, the mother. But he comes back in the evenings and afternoons and nights, organizes discourses, Veda Vicharam, Vedanta Vicharam. This goes on, sometimes bhajan. But some of the fellow comrades were lacking something. They missed this Ramakrishna's bhakti. This Vedanta Vicharam is becoming dry. So they all wanted to go around the world, go around this country. So they started wandering. So Narendra, also with the name of Sachidananda, started going to Benares. He goes to Benares, in fact, 3 times he goes. He meets so many people and he hides himself. He doesn't want to be known as Narendranath of Ramakrishna's disciple. He also called himself Bibidananda. It's a different name. See, this is where I think they started detaching to the body. The name is just for the body, the identity. I can give any name. They go another name, he goes there. He looks for each guru. He was a little bit, I wouldn't say confused, a little bit looking for a navigating aid to take him next. Ramakrishna is on his mind, but he goes and looks for every guru. Even when he was Sri Ramakrishna, once he ran away to Bodh Gaya. He sat under this Bodhi tree where Buddha sat to get renunciation because he likes Buddha very much. He gets some experience, he comes back to Sri Ramakrishna before. So he's looking for things and he wants to shy away from the people. And it happens once in Benares, he was going, I don't know if you've been into Kashi, and Kashi is full of monkeys, and like in Mathura. The monkeys are chasing him and he was running. And one sadhu was saw him and say, stop, face the brutes, he says, look at them. So Swami stops there, turn around and looks at the monkeys, and the monkeys are scared and they look at him and they run away. He gives him a upadesam. Why should I run away? What is that I'm going to do? Am I going to just run away to, he remembers Ramakrishna's words when he wanted the ecstasy and nirvana and all that. Ramakrishna scolded him. Oh, fool. I thought you are going to be like a banyan tree where every bird come and rest and fly away. But you want to be a selfish person. You want to attain nirvana for yourself. You remember the story I told you last time? Ramakrishna story, jumping the wall. He's telling him, no, you are not for that. So you remember that. I'm not going to sit there in a cave and find the redemption of myself and attain salvation. No. Divinity is everywhere. See, this is where I want to bring the important context, because there was a time India was in a kind of a comparison with Occidentally, the Western age and the Eastern age in India. This imbalance was there. West was progressing. The French Revolution has really opened up the aristocracies to understand that there's going to be a revolution across Europe. So even in the British monarchy started thinking about how to open up for commoners, civilians. Democracy came in, liberty, equality, fraternity. So the social order was improving. People are giving bread to everybody having food to eat, industrial revolution coming in. So there is a kind of a social progress. Dharma was rising in the West. Of course, it was dominated by theology and the theocratic church. The spiritual part is very autocratic and biased, rule-based, but Dharma was progressing. But in contrary, in India, where there's always a spiritual harmony, religious freedom, even the persecuted Parsis and Jews come to India. India was a home for all religions. But the Dharma was decaying. People have misunderstood the Vedas and Upanishads. Untouchability, caste systems are eroding. So you can see then this Westerners are ruling, the invaders come to India. They find it very easily to rule this continent. We just have to flare these divisive policies. They inflamed all this casteism. They use the intellectuals, they use the missionaries come and start schools, education. Very good thing they did, educated mass. But the education included subtle messages to convert to Christianity. The American missionaries were coming. So you see, this is a time. So what happens to a arousing individual? Should he go and escape and attain salvation and attain Brahman? Or you turn back, jump to this jungle from the wall and say, look, I hold on to it. So what do I need to do? Again, she go back to Ramakrishna's word. And once he said, Ramakrishna said, religion is not for empty stomachs. So he said, look, like the teacher is going to stand up in the class and say, shut up, everybody, I'm going to take class, be silent. Or the doctor is giving antibiotic to stop everything in your system. Swami started thinking, I have to stop this. I have to really take the Western values of social order, bring it to India. Industrial revolution has to come to India. Bread has to be there in every table. Everybody have to eat. This country is full of tamasic quality. Lazy people. Lazy people, one who doesn't do work, don't do work. They go to God and say, make me pass the exam. They don't study. Give me more money. They pretend to be devoted people. They go behind these sadhus and sages. Then intellectuals come into Brahma Samaj, they talk about abstract esoteric knowledge, quote Shankara here and there, Ramanuja here and there. But nobody cares about this poverty, poor people, untouchables. See, therefore he need to really challenge those scholastic people. He had to create empathy in them. The only way to do it, shut up, no need of religion. So he started thinking this way. But nobody likes him. This is dangerous to say. How can you say that? No, of course, he eats fish and he eats meat, because that is his thing. And he says, eat, be strong. You want a strong body of the people. So he does not find audiences for him. So he goes around, he travels around, comes back to this mutt, goes back again, second time. While traveling like this in a different name, this time called Vibhishtananda. He meets one Pandit in Porbandar, Pandit Shankar Pandya. He is a very scholar, Advaitic scholar. And he tells him, I think you need to be not in this country. You go to West. This country is now in the Western mode, inheriting things. So you go to West, go and change the fundamental part, go and change this root cause, bring their value. In a way, his trigger was, in a way, he's a guru, to him. So he takes his heart. I must go to West. And he has a rational mind. What is lacking what Sri Ramakrishna demonstrated is a communication to other people. He always felt shy, inward. So here there is a man who can speak well. He said, I had to go. But how to go? No idea. So he travels around. He meets the Maharaja of Khetri. And he has become friends with him. And in fact, he is the one who gives him the turban and the saffron dress. Because it was very hot in Rajasthan. So he started wearing turban and it becomes his style. He comes to Mysore, he meets the Maharajas and Travancore Maharajas, go to Rameshwaram. There he meets the Ramnath king, Bhaskara Shetapati. In all these people, he talks about things, remember once he said idol worship is bad to Ramakrishna, but he said idol worship is good to Maharaja of Khetri. Because, I think in one occasion he said, Maharaja said, idol worship is bad. And in retort, and in Swami said he abused a picture, a portrait of his father to provoke Maharaja. Maharaja got very angry. That's my father. No, it's just a picture. So like that, how he converted from Saguna worship against to Saguna worship follower in his heart, Advaitic understanding, but poor experience, but no Advaitic preacher, passing all the religions to back burner, service and worship to the poor is the main goal. But the root cause is in the West. By going to the West, I change the mind because that industrial revolution going to influence the world. I must go to the root cause. See, this is a universal thinking. I do that. I bring back the values to India. So he tells all these points to everybody else, and all the Maharaja of Bhaskar Shedapati in particular, and Khetris, and the disciples in Chennai, those times called Madras, they collect money. They want to give the money to him. In Chennai, he announces that he's intended to go to this World Parliament in Chicago. First time, go. But he was nobody. He was not a head of a mutt. He was not a religious order. And there was somebody going from Brahma Samaj, somebody going from Theosophical Society, Sindh province. He was not there. But Maharaj of Khetri organizes, and he organizes to get a passport, and one of the disciples in Chennai apply for the passport. And in the passport, he go to enter the name. That time his name was Bishikesh Ananda. He changed his name that time, Bishikesh Ananda. And the story, and the biography says, no, it looks bad, I will change to Vidya Vivekananda. So the name changed to Vivekananda on the passport. In fact, the passport was given back to him. He says, it's not my name. I said, that's your name. This we checked with the Maharaja of Khetri, he agreed. So he takes disciples given the name. Normally gurus give names to disciples, and this time disciples give the name to guru. So he takes Swami Vivekananda. That's the time. So he takes it up, and then the day comes in, it sails to Sri Lanka, Japan, and goes to Canada, and then take a train. He goes to Chicago in April 1893. But it's when he goes there, he finds a shock that the conference is in September, and he has no money. The money is just running out like a thing, and so he is really trying to find somebody to support. He struggles. Like at the story short, I think then he find one wonderful lady, Mrs. Johnson, and she says, "Look, probably you go to." No, he gets an advice to go to Boston, Massachusetts. There the conditions are better. He may get some aids and all that. He goes there, and then he finds this lady helping him. And she introduces to a Professor Wright of Harvard University. And Professor talks to him, and he finds it extremely brilliant. And he says, look, he says, I'll write to the convention center to take you as a delegate. He writes a letter. And the delegates ask him, who is this young man? And his response was, his knowledge is much bigger than the total faculty of our university about this Oriental science. So take him there. So his name was registered. And just before that convention, he buys the tickets for him to go to Chicago. So he takes a train, comes to Chicago station. He's weird looking, right? With all this turban and glowing face and chiseled body and big jaw and beautiful eyes. Everybody is scared of him and awed at him, and they look at him very reverentially. But he comes to the station, but he finds the address slip is missing. He doesn't know the address. Nobody could help him out. See how much a struggle they go through. And then he cold night, and he lies down in an empty garage, in an empty wagon, train wagon, sleeps there for a night. Next day morning, he sees that river, and he walks to the river, and there he sees a very kind lady. He comes to her and says, okay, I will take you to my house. So she gives him milk and everything. She understands what's going on, and she knows this convention center place. Then they go. So it was on the day, which is 1893, September 11th. Swami Vivekananda arrives as a delegate. He was given number 31 on the stage. So everybody's sitting there. You all know the story after that. So everybody talks about it, their religion, their promises, sometimes condemning other religions. You see, one thing I want to give you an anecdote. Many months before, when Sri Ramakrishna was alive, once Swami goes to Sri Ramakrishna and complains about a particular sect. That sect is doing this way, upasana, which is not correct. See his compliance. Sri Ramakrishna at the time says, why are you complaining? That is their way of thinking. That is they want to reach the God. Let them do. Then he gives an example. Sri Ramakrishna always gives beautiful examples. He says, look, in the house, you come from the front door. The cleaner, the scavenger may come from the back door. They come to the house. You don't need to come to the back door. You can do the front door. But everybody comes to the house. So this is always in his mind. So he doesn't want to condemn any religions. That is a bad thing to do. Therefore, he starts with the beautiful phrase, brothers and sisters of America, and I think that in his history. So he was asked to give 12 lectures and spellbounding talks he makes. And he praises the Christianity, praises the church work, but he condemns them as well. And in fact, New York Times writes after his speech, we made a mistake of sending missionaries to convert in India. So that is a kind of a profound authority that he exercised on them. Then they were asked him to stay. So his stay continued. He goes around everywhere. He's called cyclonic saint because he's all over the place. But they also use him as a brand, his name there, his discussion will be the last part of the agenda, because if he's the first one, everybody will leave. So they keep him on the last one. He started realizing it. This is not what he wanted to have. Every time he finished a talk, he comes to the room, he cries, because my brother needs bread in India. This industrial revolution has to happen in India. I need to go back. So eventually he departs. He comes back to Bengal. Again, he comes back to a roaring reception, comes back to Bengal and sets up this mutt. The Belur mutt was set up. He preaches this. He says, go and serve. Your question is to serve the community. Make the young men to rise above the thing. Find out the youngsters who can actually change the life span of India. So he gives a lot of lectures, a lot of books he writes, Karma Yoga, Raja Yoga. The Patanjali Yoga Sutra we studied. He was the one popularized in West. He called it Raja Yoga. He wrote a book on Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga. He has a talk about the stages of India. So many things he does. But he also has a lot of critics on him. Even one brothers critiqued him. One said, look, you went there and you preached your own ideas. You did not say what Ramakrishna said. And he bounces back them. And what do you know about Ramakrishna? He shouts at them. And then he goes and cries. And one particular thing, Yogananda tells him, look, in your conversation, in your preaching, you are not preaching the bhakti. And that is not what Ramakrishna taught you. And he bounces on him. What are you talking? What do you know about the bhakti? He said, closing the eyes and verbatim he says, closing the eyes and describing the nose of the god. Sentimental nonsense, he claims. What is this for? Your bhakti is out of fear. After this particular conversation, he goes to the room and tears come through and he cries. The disciples looks at him and they realize that, once upon a time, he has told them that, When I know who I am, I'll be gone. Same thing, Sri Ramakrishna's life. Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, whenever he have a conversation with people, suddenly will ask about, look at the kitchen and say, what is the food today? What are you cooking? Even when Mother Sharada joins him and when she cooks for everybody else, he'll be on a very devotional discourse with the disciple, and then he'll go to the kitchen and say, what is the food today? And once Mother Sharada was really worried about it. I said, look, you give so much of wonderful knowledge to people, and why are you asking about the food in between? After some time he says, because I have no desires. When there is no desires, there's nothing else. There's nothing to hold this body. I'll depart. So he indicates to her, if for 3 days, if I don't ask for food, I'll be gone. And it exactly happened. He never asked for food. In 2 days, he's gone. So sometimes the Ichcha Shakti, they just purposely create. Even we say, when people are in dead bed, we'll say if it's not going away, they say maybe some desire. Okay, we have very materialistic desires, but these jnanis keep. So these disciples think about this. When Narendra got, Vivekananda got emotional and angry for a while and crying in his trance, we will not provoke him anymore. Because he is doing a divine act. It's like a mother says, the exam coming and she has a child to study and study. He says, no, mom, I have to say the shloka now. I need to do this one. And he is putting an act on it. Mother is going to say, put the book down. You can do shloka later. Do your work. Mother is not cursing the Swami, not cursing this divine act of bhakti, but priority. Like Mahatma Gandhi says, even ourselves, when you are very hungry, it's very difficult to worship God. That's the reason why we practice fasting, brothers, to overcome hunger, overcome sleep. But for a common man, this is very important. So he has come to that practical level. So the disciples are very quiet, but also there is a marked transformation in Swami's life. He become very, where he used to be like a fire. He give a tit for tat, Somebody called him, anyway, it's an anecdote, doesn't matter. So his attitude changed. Like Bhagavan Ramana, he is now surrounding himself with pets, sheep and dogs and, antelopes, cows. So he became a very soft person. Once, I want to finish in a minute. One of his disciples once comes to him and say, Swamiji, I am trying to do concentration meditation like you. I close the windows, close the doors, close my eyes, sit quietly, Siram Sukamasanam. All this I do. I get nothing. I don't get that anxiety. And he said, okay, open the window, open the door, open your eyes, look around you. What do you see? If you see divinity, go and serve it. So he is not, why did Sri Ramakrishna touch him, gave him Diksha? Why did he is not doing that? Very two different things. You cannot compare these two. Sri Ramakrishna found Narendra as a very ripened individual to take up this role. And he needs to be really pushed to the corner. Sri Vivekananda finds his disciples aimlessly wandering, tamasic in nature. They need to do things. So very different things. Even another incident I'll say, and then I'll conclude it. This disciple is a Vedantic scholar studying Vedanta and everything. And by the way, there's a lot of criticism and then there's a lot of responses, but I just pick up those important things. And this chap comes to Swami and say, Swami, you asked me to go and do service to these people, and don't the Vedanta, especially your Advaitic Vedanta, which you hold it dear, tells you that everything is Maya, everything is illusion, and your moksha pradhanam is important. Mokshu, that's important. You must get redemption, so you must talk about mukti. But you are talking about doing service to these people. So Vivekananda says, yes, don't you understand the same Advaita? The Vedanta tells you that everything is Maya. Therefore, mukti is in the context of Maya. Release is in the context of imprisonment. If you're not imprisoned, where is the relief? So mukti is in the concept of Maya. So if you are discarding Maya as a Vedantic scholar, discard, mukti, because mukti is this one. Then he says, well, you also know Vedanta tells you, you are Atma, Tattvamasi. You are eternally free. If you're eternally free, why are you looking for freedom? You see, he gives you two different perspectives. So you don't take this one for discarding Tattvamasi Vicharam. But here you can do Vicharam. But the realization has to come through. If you're realized, you become a Karma Yogi. If you're not realizing it, you have a mental block, you must become a Karma Yogi. You see? This is where the convergence comes to what we are trying to learn. Karma Yoga is the first step and also the last step. Because beyond the last step, you become a Mukta. Before the first step, you become an ordinary Jiva. So he told him that way. So it is how Swami Vivekananda led a life. There are a lot of things to understand, read, and you go and read the books. But whenever you read the book, whenever you read the quote, you can treat him as an avatara or God, and fine. But I personally would like to treat him as a very noble soul, because the moment we treat him as a God, and then we put a picture, put a sandal paste on his forehead, and do a Kapura Arti, that's fine. But I think it's more important to see a man. No, he has got asthma, he's got diabetic, he got so many things, poverty, but single-minded, single force. One person can change. Like we see the Bhakti Vedanta manner, the Swamiji there, 64 years of age, he went to America. One man can turn around. So this is the great example of Swami Vivekananda. So everything comes to an end. So he took this resolution that to leave the body. I think it was in 1902, July, the American Independence Day. I think it's 4th. Of course, he went to America twice again. The 4th of July, 1902. I think the afternoon, or maybe in the evening, 9:20 or something like that in the evening. But what he tells on the day in the morning, he asked the disciples to open up all the windows and the doors of the Beluba. Everything was opened up. And it was a hot day. And he was telling them, look, when I'm going to be in a meditation, and please fan me, with the thing there. So he goes there and they meditate, and he goes into kind of a samadhi. And they do the fanning him for some time. And then he just goes and lies down in a bed. So they all see him, and then they thought, okay, he's gone to bed and slept. But in the sleep, he departs, and the log says that after he departed, they see a blood clot in his nostrils on the tip of the eyes. It's normally said in Siddha Purushas when they give up that prana, it goes through the head, and the blood surges, and then it goes there. And this is the belief. And he says it was 39 at the time. So 39 he departed, left the most profound legacy. So the dharma and jnana has to be at par. So he became a universal teacher. So much to learn from him. So I would stop it here. Om Asadoma Sadgamaya.
Om Asadoma Sadgamaya.
Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya.
Tamsoma Jyotirgamaya
Mrityoma Amardam Gamaya.
Mrityoma Amritangamaya.
Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Hari Om Tatsat.
Thanks.
Namaskar.
Thank you, Raja.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Raja sir. Thank you so much, Balaji sir.
Thank you. Very good.
Thank you.
Very inspiring, Vivekananda.
Thank you.